I use that word connection when I talk about the milkmaids, but it also applies to the land, especially the land. That's where the food is coming from that feeds our cows, and connection to the cows, connection to our community. So as a woman in ag, connection is probably the biggest word that I can use. I want to feel that I am making a connection to all those things, sort of as an inflection point.
Welcome to the Farmhouse. That was Becky Collins Brooks, who you just heard. I'm Stephanie Spiker.
I'm Candace Wierzbowski. Becky is a farmer from the Catskills. She and her husband operate Hilltop Farm, where they raise Wagyu beef cattle. They also have a dairy herd, and Becky is a cheesemaker. She is also one of the women behind the Meeting of the Milkmaids, which is an awesome sounding gathering where women who make cheese get together and discuss issues and eat cheese, and it just sounds like somewhere that I really want to be. Steph, what do you think about cheese? Do you have a favorite kind of cheese?
I am a cheese fan for sure. My favorite has always been Munster cheese. That's my go-to. Recently, though, I've gotten more into brie, and as we will hear later, Becky had a favorite cow named Brie, so I support that.
It all comes together.
Do you have a favorite?
I do. So I like a very strong cheese. In fact, I think I'm on record on Lancaster Farming's TikTok talking about how much I like a stinky cheese. I love myself like a Roquefort, but I also really like a kind of cheese called Humboldt Fog, which is this kind of smoky, sweet cheese. I could talk about cheese for a very long time, and I kind of do in this interview with Becky. So let's dive into it and learn all about Becky with the good cheese. Becky Collins Brooks, welcome to the Farmhouse.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here.
Great. Well, we start out by asking all of our guests the same question, and that is, did you always want to work in agriculture?
Not always. Agriculture, though, has always been a part of my life. I grew up here, actually, where we live now, and I went away. But in my family, agriculture was a big part of our lives. My dad is the son of a hog farmer in Iowa, and my mom grew up in Warwick, New York, which is also part of the Hudson Valley. It's known for being surrounded by the black dirt, where onions are grown. And I grew up hearing stories, and also in a rural school where there are a lot of farm kids, so surrounded by agriculture.
Nice. So for us and then for our listeners as well, can you just tell us a little bit more about your farm?
Oh, well, we have a very small farm by today's standards, and we are in the Hudson Valley. Actually, if we go drill deeper, we're in the Rondout Valley area of the Hudson Valley. The Rondout Creek is a tributary to the Hudson, and so we have very rich soils here. A lot of Unadilla loam, which is the best farming soil. We do not have that on our farm. So we maximize what we do have by growing. We grow all the hay that we feed our cows. We have a micro dairy. We have right now 4 cows in milk. And I make cheese from their milk. We make butter. That is not for sale yet, but it will be pretty soon, I hope. And I drink a lot of raw milk, and it's so yummy. And we have a herd of about 50 Wagyu cows. We transitioned from dairy. I think a lot of farmers are doing that these days, from dairy to beef, because dairy farming is tough. So we decided to stay really small with dairy and go a little bit bigger with Wagyu. And it's been very good for us. I'm looking out at my beautiful chicken coop my husband built for me, and we have a flock of 25 American breast chickens. So we also have chickens for meat and eggs.
Nice. So I read one of your blog posts, and in it you say that both your Wagyu herd and your dairy herd are what you called closed herds. So can you explain what that is, and then why having closed herds is important for your farm?
Sure. So in particular, the Wagyu, it's important to us to have a closed herd. A closed herd means that we don't purchase animals, feeders, or any other stock to bring in to the farm. Everything that's here is born and bred here. Barton, my husband, knows how to do artificial insemination, so that's how we breed our cows. We do not have a bull for either the dairy or the Wagyu. Um, the gene pool for Wagyu in the United States is, well, in the world is pretty small because Japan only opened their genetic dispersal to the world for a very short time. So it's very important to us to keep tight control over the genetics in that Wagyu herd. So that's one really important factor. The other factor is health of our herd. Right now, there's a new tick-borne illness that's a really great example. I can't really give you the name of the disease, but it's a Eurasian tick that is extremely prolific and dangerous. And locally, it actually is in New York now, close by to us. And so, in order to protect our herd from that tick as best we can, we don't want any other animals coming onto this farm. In fact, we have a biosecurity plan in place where we don't allow people to bring their dogs. No pets allowed except for what's already here. It's really important to us to keep our herd healthy.
Yeah, I mean, definitely biosecurity is something that we talk about here at the paper a lot in terms of, we cover a lot of what's going on with avian influenza. We talk about like
Mhm.
African swine fever a lot in our articles. So obviously biosecurity is such a high priority on farms. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense to keep everything else out.
It is, and we've invested years in breeding this herd into to what we really want it to be, and we're still in the process of doing that. It's been about 11 years that we've been raising Wagyu together, and um, that is so. To us, it's not just the time; it's also the money. It's expensive. Cows are not cheap to keep.
Mm-hmm.
They're not pets, and we feed them and we work with them every day. So, that investment of time and money is really precious to us when the bottom line is the margin is not huge. So,
Yeah, I feel like investment really is the key word there. Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, so we're gonna pivot a little to talk about something that I know I get excited to talk about, and Becky, I bet you do too, and that is cheese.
Yeah.
Um, so what got you interested in making cheese?
Well, when you are dating a dairy farmer, pretty much the only time you have together is in the milking barn or making hay. And one of the things that Barton and we've been together for just about exactly 18 years. And one of the things that we really enjoyed in our early days together was standing at the kitchen stove, bringing in some milk from the barn after he'd milked his 50 cows. And we'd make cheese together. We'd make mozzarella, just simple, the 30-minute quick mozzarella cheese recipe. And we'd either have pizza or we'd have fresh tomatoes with basil. And I realized I really loved that, and I
I mean,
would
that
gift
sounds
that to.
amazing.
It was so yummy. And I think people don't realize how different real food from a farm tastes directly from a farm. So that kind of piqued my interest. And then I always really I had that in my head that I was going to learn to make different kinds of cheeses. And then we got a really sweet little dairy heifer. Her name was Bree. She just recently passed away, actually, and she really inspired us, both of us. And I said to him, I'm going to make cheese with Bree's milk. She was beautiful and she was very fancy and clean, and she was part Jersey, and Jersey cows make really good milk for cheese. So in 2017, I had saved and I was determined, and I took the Penn State Science and Art of Cheese course, the short course. And I say to a lot of people that was life changing. I had world class teachers and who are professors in the ag school there. And I spent time in Berkey Creamery making cheese. And I had people from all over the world in that class. So it was exciting and inspiring. And I talk about it now and I still get goosebumps. And I came home and I started making cheese with Bree's milk, practicing on the kitchen stove. And I started making the cheeses that I learned in the course, cheese curds and feta.
Hmm.
Pretty simple.
Mm.
Okay.
And then it just went from there. I really became addicted to it. It's peaceful, it's thoughtful, it's everything that stimulates me. It's creative, and science and math, and you have to stay aware and engaged. And it's also solitary. Barton and I are both introverts, so it's nice to stand there by myself, listening to music and paying attention to what's going on in the cheese pot.
I mean, that's a wonderful story. I love how it kind of starts with your love of making cheese kind of almost started out of like a date night sort of situation where you guys were using that as a way to bond. And then, Brie coming into the picture and your love for Brie. It's just, there's so much love in that story. I feel that I really appreciated hearing that.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah. So what makes a good cheese, in your opinion?
What makes a good cheese? The milk.
Yeah.
That's the very first thing, and what the cows are eating. And
Mm.
there are days when we're milking. We do chores together every morning and every night. We that's our actually our really connecting time together. And there are mornings when the night before we know when we feed the hay that we're feeding that the next morning the milk is going to be gorgeous.
Ooh,
So it
okay.
starts with the food that they're eating, beautiful hay, and then the milk, and then the care that you take in the cheese pot. But really, it's the milk.
Do you have a favorite kind of cheese to make? And also, is it your favorite kind of cheese to eat, or is that something separate?
No, they're both the same. Brie was actually named for Bart's very favorite cheese.
Hmm.
And we did that on purpose because I said, I'm gonna make you some brie someday. And from brie. And I've made some bloomy rind cheeses. I'm not a bloomy rind cheese person. My favorite cheese from the time that I was a little girl is cheddar. I think it harkens back to my Welsh and English roots, but I really love cheddar. So my goal has been to make I make cloth bound cheddar, and that's I really stick to that. And I make a lot of feta because Barton also loves that. I make cow's milk feta style cheese, and we have a lot of that around. A lot. That's an easy, quick cheese for me to make. It's I would say, of all the cheeses, that feta is probably the best beginner cheese to make.
Okay.
Mozzarella, the real mozzarella is a little more complicated than people think, and it takes time and practice to make it just right, and get it salty enough and just the right consistency. But cheddar is that is my Mount Everest. I love it. I love it. And I keep making, setting the bar a little higher for myself. So I've made some pretty good ones, actually, really, really good ones, that I'm proud of. My goal is the little tyrosine crystals that make it a little crunchy. And that takes a little while longer to age, and I don't have much patience. So
You just want the cheddar now. I completely
Yeah.
understand
I
it.
feel like cheddar's such a classic cheese too.
It
Like when
is.
you think cheese, I feel like cheddar comes to mind.
Yeah. All right, one more cheese question, and then I swear I will relent. What's a cheese that you think more Americans should be eating or at least consider trying?
oh my goodness. Well, I just had in December a very long age Comté. And Comté is, they have a huge marketing arm in Europe, but it is truly delicious. It is a melty cheese that you can use for melted over potatoes, or you can just eat it warm on the kitchen counter out of hand. It is a really perfect cheese. To me, Comté it really is stellar. That's one. And the other one I would say that goes hand in hand that I have it sitting on the counter right now is called Prima Donna. And that is a delicious Dutch. It's a Gouda, or Gouda, as a lot of people say. But it's almost Parmesan-y. It's got those tyrosine crystals in it that are crunchy. And we actually have been consuming quite a bit of that as well. And that's really also very perfect on a cheese board. Not necessarily melty, but really just that pairs with just about anything, something savory, something sweet. It's yummy.
Hoda, you say I never knew that I was pronouncing Gouda incorrectly.
Everyone does. It's actually, I learned that in my cheese class.
Huh.
It's Gouda is how you say it in Dutch.
A
So
very
yeah,
soft G.
All
Yeah.
right,
yeah,
interesting.
exactly.
All
Both of
right.
those cheeses sound amazing,
I
though.
know. I'm
So
gonna be so hungry by the end of
I
this. I
know.
already am.
They're really yummy.
Yeah.
So, I would. You mentioned before your favorite cow Brie, and I did read your blog post that you wrote about when she passed, and I'm so sorry that honestly I was there were some tears in my eyes as I was reading that. It was
Thank you.
beautiful. But in it, I noticed you talked about saying like she wasn't really just a cow, she was like a teammate to you guys. And I thought the use of the word teammate was very interesting. And I think a lot of people outside of the farming community don't always think about how farm animals are, they mean more to the farmer than just either the milk or meat they produce, like they mean more. And, I would just love to hear your thoughts on, why you use the word teammate. I thought that was such a nice choice of word.
Oh, thank you. Well, they are. We talk to our cows. I think a lot of farmers do. It's a solitary work, and that's who's in the barn with us. And they're working with us on this farm. They have a job to do also. We are working our jobs. They are doing theirs. And I think Bree was unique in that she knew what she was doing. We know that it was her turn to milk, and she would move right into the perfect position. After lounging or lying down, she would get up and say, okay, now it's my turn. She knew what she had to do. And all of our cows do. They all have different personalities, every single one of them. Every single Wagyu cow has a different personality. And that's part of being, I think, a good herdsman is knowing your cows. And but they know us. So there's a mutuality there that I think this is the piece that they are doing so much for us while they're here, whether they are our dairy animals or our beef animals, that we feel like we are in service to them while they're here. We really do. It's really icky out there right now, and we like to keep them as comfortable as we can in the mud and keeping them clean and keeping them happy. So yeah, they're team members. We're all in it together.
Yeah, I love that. The other thing that stood out to me in that blog post that you had written was your kind of discussion on the lack of local vets and local farm stores that were really highlighted while you were trying to help Bree. And, I think in most farm communities there's similar issues. And do you think there is really a way to remedy what's going on there and that lack?
I think educating people, and that's one of the reasons I wrote that, is that I think if people don't know, then there isn't a solution because they don't know the problem. I think that for us specifically here, gentrification has been a huge problem. A lot of people have arrived here. It is very beautiful where we live. I mean, I'm on one side of my window, I'm looking out at the Catskill Mountains, literally right at the Catskills, and on the other side, I'm looking at the Schwangong Ridge. On both sides of the house, it's absolutely gorgeous. People come here for that beauty, but when they come here for the beauty, they buy the land, and so there are fewer farmers. So, I think encouraging young people to go into farming, it's such a multi-layered question, with huge hours of answer. But I think the first thing is actually articulating the problem, which is what I tried to do in that blog post.
Yeah. And then, I wanted to ask, we've talked a lot about dairy and cheese, which we both here love dairy and cheese, so nothing wrong with talking
If
about
that
it.
hasn't become apparent yet.
Yeah. But I did want to ask you more about the Wagyu herd, and because, that's a big part of your life as well. And what makes Wagyu such a coveted beef breed? I mean, it's something that it typically, if you're trying to buy cuts of Wagyu, it's not cheap, and it's something that people, really want to try at some point in their lives. So like, what makes Wagyu so special?
So actually, we started reading about Wagyu in Lancaster farming, and
That's
it
fun.
was it was many years ago, and it was just starting to make its mark in the U.S. meat market, beef market, and we I kept nudging Bart. I would really like to try it, and he of course was like, no, we're not going to do that. And, it's kind of like a legendary story around here with our friends that I came home from work one day and he said, Becky, I bought a present for you. I bought you 3 straws of Wagyu semen. And I knew it was definitely not a diamond necklace. Um, but I was really excited. And that first animal that we harvested, we tried it. And so the question is, what makes it so coveted? That hamburger, that very first hamburger, decided us on doing this. It was as simple as that. The flavor is not like other beef. The fat is it has a different quality. It has a lower melting point than regular than other beef breeds. So it's kind of the olive oil of the beef fat world, the tallow
Hmm.
world. Um, and it has Wagyu is actually known as the red meat that's good for you. So it has very high omega fatty acids in it that are the right balance of 3 and 6. It's heart healthy. So it's a red meat that is good for you. The marbling is gorgeous. It's tender, flavorful. It's got all of the things that people want in a good steak or a good hamburger.
Nice. And honestly, I feel like for a farmer, Wagyu semen and a diamond necklace are pretty comparable, right? Like,
Thank you. Well, sort of.
Valentine's Day is just around the
yeah,
corner,
Yeah,
guys.
I know.
oh, jeez.
I don't know when we're publishing. I
I
don't know if that
know.
joke's going to work.
It might be, by the time this episode comes out, it might be too late for Valentine's Day, but that's okay.
Well, there's birthdays and anniversaries.
Very true.
All right, so we wanted to talk about the meeting of the milkmaids, which is a great title for anything. But I wanted to hear what's the story behind the meeting of the milkmaids? What is it, and how did it come to fruition?
So, oh boy. So, about 2 years ago, I had a rather unexpected and pretty serious surgery. I had an Achilles replacement surgery, and I was housebound and actually recliner bound for about 2 months, which for someone who's active and used to being outside all the time, I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
even get out on our porch. So, it could have been emotionally devastating. But thank goodness for a lot of books on cheese that I was reading. I had a stack of books about cheese that I wanted to read. And then Instagram, believe it or not, I had established some connections to women in the cheese world who were brilliant and fantastic writers or photographers or traveling the world seeking out great cheeses, or cheesemakers who were rooted in their place, or farmers who were making great milk for to be made into cheese. So I made the decision that I was not going to wallow in self-pity, but I was going to start imagining the things that made me happy. And one of the things that made me really happy was thinking about sitting in a room with all of these people all together.
Hmm.
And I thought, well, why can't I make that happen? So from my recliner, I started connecting women to each other and back to me. And I formed a team. And I said, if we did this, would you be interested? And so the team came together. Um, One is a cheese traveler and photographer, sort of a photojournalist. Her name is Babs Perkins. Another is a cheesemaker, a young cheesemaker with a huge career in front of her. Her name is Lily Orr. She's at Cato Corner. She makes some absolutely beautiful cheeses. And I have Rachel Banks, who is just in the process of founding the New York Cheese Council, the New York State Cheese Council, which is kind of a big deal. And a dear friend who is a home cheesemaker local to me. Her name is Indigo Weaver. So we all came together and we decided we were going to have a gathering. And we did. So last May, the beginning of May, we had a gathering here on our farm, and there were 36 people crammed into our farm store. We had a wonderful speaker, Mary Casella. She won a fellowship to study the history of milkmaids. So the name of our gathering, it came from Lily. Lily loves alliteration. So she said, Becky, what if we called it the meeting of the milkmaids? And I said, I love it. So we all had our own tasks. Rachel did the graphics, and Babs showed up the day before, and from somewhere out in the world, she travels all over the place, and she helped us get everything ready. Indigo had signage made. We just all did a little bit of something. And then we just got together and had a day together. And at the end of the day, we had a large cheese tasting. Everyone was encouraged to bring a piece of cheese made by a woman with a
Hmm.
pairing. And so our store counter was completely covered with the most gorgeous cheeses. And we had a really great time. And we decided to do it again. It's happening again this year. It's happening on May 4th. We have a different location, which I'm not ready to announce yet, but it's actually very
Okay.
exciting. And yeah, we're really pleased.
That's awesome. That sounds like a fantastic event. I'm very happy for
Yeah.
all of you that it's happening again. I hope there are many more meetings of the milkmaids ahead of you
Thank you.
guys.
And
Thank
a
you.
counter full of unique cheeses sounds amazing.
I know.
I'm
Yeah.
I
Oh,
would love to experience that.
you
Yeah.
can't even believe there was one that was given to me by an incredible person, Rachel Fryer. She's from the Finger Lakes region in New York. And she handed me a piece of blue cheese and she said, you need to try this because blue cheese, I love cheddar. That's my favorite cheese. I really also love blues. And she handed me this piece of sheep's milk cheese and she said, this is one of the last pieces of this cheese that will ever exist. And I want
Mm.
you to have it.
Oh
And
wow.
it
Wow.
was so delicious and it's gone.
Yeah.
That cheese disappeared because that woman with her flock of sheep retired. So she's no longer making cheese or has her flock of sheep. She was tired. So that those are the moments and the connections that happen. Right. And because of that, Rachel Fryer is special to me because
Hmm.
she was generous in that way.
Yeah. It's a big thing to share with someone.
It is.
Yeah. So how do you think being a woman-run and woman-attended event helped shape the meeting of the milkmaids? Do you think it would have been different if men had been invited or involved in the running of it?
That is such a good question. We had some people that said, why are you excluding men? And I
Hmm.
said, well, in a lot of ways, they're not excluded. My husband is here and he is doing a lot to make this happen. So he was involved. There were men involved, husbands,
Hmm.
partners. And actually, there was a very well-known entrepreneur who was supporting us from afar in a huge way. So um, I think that women, this is the other piece of the milkmaids. Women can be really tough on each other. And I wanted, when I was conceiving of it, I wanted a place that was safe for everybody
Hmm.
to fully be themselves, no matter their political viewpoint or their cheese making ability or where they were at in their cheesemongering career. I wanted everybody to come together as equals, as women first, and then with just a passion for cheese, however that manifests itself in their lives. And honestly, the cheese community is a really amazing, beautiful community. So when everybody sort of coalesced in that room, the energy was incredible. And there were definitely disagreements. We had some really open conversations. And some of it we did on purpose because if you're not comfortable with each other's differences, then there's discomfort, just
Hmm.
inherent. And we wanted to dispel that discomfort. We want people to be comfortable with differences. So I think that if men were involved, I think uh, I love my husband and he is very sensitive, but I think that, men have just a different way of functioning with each other. And women, when they are left to their own devices in a room together, we can really accomplish amazing things. So that was the idea, to just connect and interact and become comfortable with one another.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, I love that. So that actually brings us almost to the end of our interview, but we always end with the same question for everyone, and that is, what does being a woman in ag mean to you?
Oh boy, that's
It's
a
a bit of
big
a big one,
question.
yeah.
That's a big question. Um, for me, and this is probably the most personal answer that I can give, is I use that word connection when I talk about the milkmaids, but it also applies to the land, especially the land. That's where the food is coming from that feeds our cows, and connection to the cows, and connection to our community. So as a woman in ag, um, connection is probably the biggest word that I can use. I want to feel that I am making a connection to all those things, sort of as an inflection point.
I love that. It's a great answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Becky Collins Brooks, thank you so much for joining us here at the farmhouse. It was great having you.
Thank you so much.
All right, cheese and Wagyu. Honestly, that's a perfect interview to me, and now I'm very hungry.
Yeah, it also sounds like the perfect menu to me.
Yeah.
Something kind of interesting occurred to me while Becky was talking. I actually was having kind of flashbacks to an earlier episode where we talked to Shelby Watson Hampton, who she runs a winery, and she was talking about just everything that goes into making a bottle of wine. And we said in that episode that every bottle is precious, but now I kind of think that every wedge of cheese is just as precious. And I think cheese and wine are kind of similar, not just because they go great together.
They go hand in hand.
They
You can't
do.
have one without the other.
But they're kind of agricultural products that require a lot of extra work behind the scenes that I think people don't always consider. When you see milk or eggs or an apple in the grocery store, you know how they got there pretty much. I mean, obviously there's always a ton of work to be done in agriculture, but I think products like cheese or wine or, beer or other spirits, there's just so much extra stuff that has to go into producing them. And it just kind of reveals just how complex the ag industry is.
Yeah, I find cheese making fascinating. I don't really know much of anything about it, but it's cool that she just completely followed a love and a passion. And it's also cool for me as a Penn Stater that she did a Penn State cheese course and shouted out the Berkey Creamery.
I was waiting.
One of my favorite places at Penn State, the Berkey Creamery. So gotta love a little shout out to Penn State. At least I do. I'm sure nobody else cares, but I care.
I feel like everything comes back to ice cream on this podcast, and I don't hate it.
I'm in favor. I think we should talk about ice cream in every single episode if possible.
All right, well, I think that wraps up this episode. If you want to reach out and talk to us, you can reach us at farmhouse@lancasterfarming.com. I'm Candace Rosbowski.
I'm Stephanie Spiker.
This has been The Farmhouse, and thanks for listening.
Talk to you next week.
Bye.
This episode of The Farmhouse is copyright 2024 by Lancaster Farming Newspapers and part of the Steinman Communications family.
It was written by Stephanie Spiker and Candace Rosbowski and produced by Eric Herlock. The music you've heard throughout the episode is courtesy of Tin Bird Shadow.